The Sheikh Billionaire's gaze burned like desert fire as the decree was spoken aloud, her fate sealed with a coldness that chilled the marble halls. No longer daughter, but a bargaining chip. No longer cherished, but discarded for the sake of prestige. In that moment, her world shattered under the weight of her father's harsh judgment, marking the beginning of a life she never chose. The emirate shimmered beneath a relentless sun, its golden sands stretching endlessly beyond the horizon, where palatial spires glittered like jewels against a sapphire sky. The opulence within the grand palace was overwhelming. Gleaming mosaics framed by intricate arches, the scent of rare jasmine incense weaving through halls adorned with silk tapestries and gleaming onyx. Yet beneath every lavish detail lay an unspoken rigidity, a world bound by unyielding tradition and relentless expectation. Within this gilded cage, the young woman moved silently, her heart heavy with the invisible shroud of rejection. Her reflection in the ornate mirrors offered no comfort. The world deemed her plain, a blemish in her family's lineage. She was a ghost amid vibrant celebrations, her presence barely acknowledged, swallowed by the echoes of whispered insults and the cold calculations of those who measured worth by beauty and alliances. Each step she took was laden with the ache of invisibility, a suffocating reminder that she was no one's beloved, but everyone's secret shame. Contrasting her fragility was the imposing figure of the Sheikh Billionaire, a man cloaked in authority and mystery. His eyes, dark and penetrating, held centuries of royal lineage, but also a hidden unrest, an internal battle masked beneath the armor of command. He was a ruler, shaped by duty and hardened by solitude, wielding power like a double-edged sword. Behind the regal facade lurked a complexity few dared perceive. When her father declared the forced union, a silent sentence veiled in words of practicality and family honor, the palace air thickened with unspoken tension. The Sheikh received her, not with the customary disdain reserved for unwanted brides, but with a glance that flickered uncertainty and a curious spark. His demeanor was a storm, commanding, yet unexpectedly attentive. The cool indifference she had braced for melted into flickers of consideration that unsettled the fragile balance between them. Their first meeting crackled with silent defiance and veiled challenge. She refused to fold beneath his penetrating gaze. Her voice, though soft, carried the steel of resilience. "I am not the pawn your father believes me to be," she asserted quietly, eyes steady despite the tumult within. The Sheikh's response was a measured silence, a slight narrowing of his eyes that hinted at awakening intrigue rather than dismissal. Just as the fragile truce began to take shape, a shadow crossed the chamber. A hurried whisper from a trusted advisor reached his ears, and his expression tightened. The secret she carried, hidden beneath layers of guarded sorrow, came to light in a way no one anticipated. The revelation was sudden, striking like a desert storm, promising to unravel everything they thought they knew about each other. And before the next secret of this vast emirate unfolds, quickly check if you're already part of our caravan of stories. Many destinies are yet to be written, and I don't want you to miss a single moment. Like if this Sheikh's heart has already intrigued you. Tell Me in the comments. Where are you following this saga from? And what twist do you think is coming? Your passion for these dramas inspires us to keep going. Thank you for being with us. The Sheikh Billionaire's sharp gaze drifted toward the shadowed figure who had just delivered the whispered warning. The air in the grand chamber thickened, dense with unspoken accusations and hidden peril, as the courier's words rippled like poisonous waves beneath the surface of royal composure. The delicate balance between command and curiosity in the Sheikh's eyes darkened, flickering into something unreadable, an ember stoked by distrust. She stood nearby, trembling ever so slightly, yet unmoving, her heart pounding a frenetic rhythm against the suffocating confines of her silk gown. The cold decree from her father still echoed in her mind, but now a new weight settled upon her, the knowledge that the secret she so carefully guarded was no longer hers alone. "I must know everything," the Sheikh said, voice low and commanding, vibrating through the vaulted ceiling. His words demanded truth, yet there was a strange softness lingering beneath the steel. Her lips parted, a fragile shield cracking, as years of silence pressed forward. "It is not mine to reveal freely," she whispered, eyes lowering to the marble floor, stained by distant sunlight, filtering through stained glass windows. The scent of jasmine mingled with the faint musk of aged parchment and countless secrets. He took a slow step toward her, the resonance of his regal presence drawing the room's temperature upward. In that moment, she felt exposed, no longer a stranger to the enigma perched on his throne, but a fragile, trembling soul, caught in the desert storm of his gaze. "I can protect you," he murmured, voice roughened with the gravity of unspoken promises. Her breath hitched. Protection was a currency here, more valuable than gold, yet often wielded as shackles. She knew all too well the cost of seeming weakness in a world ruled by iron and tradition. "I fear only becoming a prisoner beneath your mercy," she answered, the steel behind her words sharpened by months of humiliation and betrayal. His eyes darkened, momentarily betraying a storm of regret. She glimpsed a fractured man, forged by hardship, yet yearning for something just beyond reach. "Then perhaps," he said, a rare vulnerability threading through his commanding tone, "we are both prisoners." The tension fractured, subtle as the breeze that stirred the silk curtains draped over the towering windows. Yet, between them, suspicion twisted like an inevitable current, pulling them toward a collision neither dared to face. Outside, the murmur of the court grew louder, a rising tide of curiosity and whispered gossip. The court's eyes were sharp arrows, poised to strike the weakest among them, and she sensed they were becoming the spectacle for a cruel game. Suddenly, footsteps echoed, brisk and insistent. A figure hurried toward the grand hall, their presence breaking the fragile silence like a shard of glass. The Sheikh's gaze snapped to the entrance, muscles tensing with the weight of anticipation. "My Sheikh," the messenger said, breathless yet composed beneath the grand expectations of this palace of sand and stone. "There are those who question your judgment, threats emerging from within the Shadow Council." The words sent a ripple through the chamber, their implications more perilous than any secret she carried. He squared his shoulders, regal poise carving through the corridor of tension. We will confront this. Her heart stuttered. The walls around them felt both protectively close and dangerously confining, the palace turning into a labyrinth of intrigue, where allies and enemies flickered like desert mirages. They walked side by side through the sumptuously decorated hall, the ornate cypress doors closing behind them with a resounding finality. The scent of exotic spices and sandalwood hung thick in the air, mingling with the palpable unease that neither dared voice aloud. "I never imagined this," she breathed, scarcely believing the empire's twisted fate thrust upon her shoulders. The Sheikh's gaze caught hers, reading the flicker of doubt beneath her composed facade. "This is no longer just about family honor," he said, voice low, but edged with steel. "It is about survival." A fragile smile ghosted her lips, a mixture of defiance and fragile hope. Survival, then, must be our only alliance. Their footsteps echoed against marble floors, and for a brief moment, the impossible alliance between the fallen daughter and the fierce Sheikh Billionaire felt like the last hope against a seamless tide of betrayal. Whispers in the shadows grew louder. Faces, both familiar and unknown, watched from behind veils and tapestries, silent but resolute in their intent. In chambers veiled by threads of gold and secrecy, questions spun like desert whirlwinds. What was this secret she bore, buried so deeply she feared it might destroy them both? And why did the Sheikh's midnight eyes betray a flicker of desperation, as if he too was veiled in shadows no one dared expose? Their fragile pact had only just begun, but already the winds of the emirate were shifting, darkening with storms that threatened to consume everything. As they passed beneath the grand archway, a figure stepped forward from the gathering dusk, cloaked in the opulence of power and menace. The veil was lifting, but the truth would strike like thunder in the stillness of dawn. The heavy silence that settled after the messenger's words was suffocating, as if the very walls of the grand chamber held their breath. The air was dense, oppressive with stakes unseen but deeply felt. The Sheikh Billionaire's eyes, sharp and unwavering, searched the shadows beyond the glittering chandeliers, where courtiers whispered like restless desert winds. His jaw tightened, a subtle tremor betraying the volcanic storm brewing beneath his regal composure. Beside him, she stood still, her pulse pounding louder than the distant drums echoing through the palace halls. The silk of her gown, embroidered with threads of gold, felt suddenly heavier, like a weight pressing against every fiber of her existence. She could no longer hide behind shadows, nor pretend the secret she bore was hers alone. It now chained them both, an invisible thread pulling them closer together against a tide of unseen enemies. "We cannot wait," the Sheikh intoned, voice slicing through the silence. His gaze flickered to her, softening just enough to reveal the cracks beneath his hardened exterior. "Your silence no longer protects you. It endangers us. Tell me everything." Her eyes lifted, meeting his with reluctant courage. The long-fought war behind her lashes softened, replaced by a fragile trust that trembled in the gulf between fear and hope. "I once carried this secret in solitude," she whispered, but now it has become a kingdom's poison, leaking into halls I never wished to enter. His lips pressed into a thin line, the weight of his heritage pressing upon him. No secret here remains hidden forever. The desert sands carry whispers, and I intend to master the storm before it consumes us. The faint scent of jasmine, mingling with the rich aroma of oud, wrapped around them like a ghost, a reminder of the palace's eternal contradictions, beauty veiled in danger, luxury cloaked in peril. The grand hall's crystal chandeliers shimmered, casting fractured patterns of light that danced across the marble floor, mirroring the fracturing trust between two souls forced into an alliance neither sought. She shivered, not from the cool air, but from the raw intensity of the moment. His hand, steady and commanding, reached out, not to touch, but to anchor. In that subtle gesture was both a promise and a challenge. "Whatever lies in the shadows," he murmured, "we face it together, not as ruler and pawn, but as survivors." Her breath caught. Those words, spoken with quiet strength, broke through years of isolation. A fragile thread of connection ignited between them, a flicker of hope in a desert night shrouded by looming storms. Yet the palace was a labyrinth of secrets and treachery. As they moved through the corridor, every step echoed tales untold. Courtiers' eyes glinted with suspicion, and the heavy velvet drapes that lined the walls seemed to conceal more than just wealth. They hid motives sharp as daggers. A sudden movement to their left forced them to halt. From the gathering shadows emerged a figure, his face half covered by a silver mask embroidered with endemic symbols of power. A whisper of silk accompanied his approach, a predator cloaked in refinement. "My Sheikh," the masked man said, voice low but edged with menace. "There are those within your council who grow restless. They question your recent decisions regarding the treaty and your new alliance." His glance flickered toward her with undisguised disdain. "They suggest weakness, and weakness invites ruin." The Sheikh's dark eyes narrowed, the flicker of doubt transforming into the blaze of defiance. "Those who question me will learn the price of disloyalty." His tone held the sting of desert storms, but underneath, a deep weariness lay hidden. She watched as his shoulders squared, the weight of crown and burden etched deep into the lines of his stern visage. In that moment, she glimpsed the man behind the myth, the lonely Sultán das Palavras, trapped by duty, yet yearning for something beyond the gilded cage. "Come," he commanded abruptly. "We must secure our defenses, not just against enemies of blood, but enemies of trust." They entered a secluded chamber, walls draped in crimson and gold, the air thick with the scent of amber and sandalwood. Here, away from prying eyes, the veil of royalty lifted just enough for two fragile souls to breathe beneath it. He released a slow, measured breath, gaze falling to hers. "Tell me the truth, no matter how shattering." Her lips quivered. The secret she carried was a wound she had tried to sew shut, a truth forbidden by blood and honor. "My father's enemies, they are not only outsiders," she began, voice brittle yet steady. "There is a fracture within our own walls, a betrayal rooted deeper than I imagined." Her fingers trembled as she traced the embroidered hem of her sleeve. I once believed my exile was the end of my story, but perhaps it is only the beginning of a war for this very throne. The Sheikh's eyes darkened, shadows pooling like a gathering storm. And you carry the key to that war? She met his gaze, unyielding now, the fragility replaced by fierce resolve. Whether by choice or chance, I do. And that is why I will not let this secret destroy us. For a heartbeat, the distance between them dissolved. They were no longer prisoner and sovereign, but two souls caught in the tempest of destiny. A sudden crash shattered the fragile stillness. The chamber's heavy door burst open, and a figure staggered in, face alight with urgency. His breath came harsh, words tumbling over each other in desperate haste. "The southern borders," he gasped. "They've risen in rebellion. It's not only the council. The emirate bleeds from within." The Sheikh's eyes flared with a storm of fury and dread. Every calculated step taken now seemed to unravel beneath the weight of chaos. He turned to her, voice a low growl tempered by desperation. "Your secret is no longer the only threat. We face an empire fracturing and a crown losing its grip." Her heart thundered. The whispered promises of protection, now a fragile shield against an oncoming tempest. Outside, the once shimmering horizon darkened, clouds rolling over the sands like looming fate. And as they stood together, the fragile alliance between the Sheikh Billionaire and the fallen daughter was tested, not just by secrets unveiled, but by enemies rising beyond their walls. In that charged silence, beneath the glittering opulence of a palace on the precipice, the Sheikh's hand closed, fingers curling not just around power, but around a resolve that could either save or shatter them all. The war for the emirate had begun, but no one knew who would survive the coming storm. The masked figure's words lingered like a venomous shadow in the opulent chamber. The Sheikh Billionaire's dark eyes flashed with a tempest of fury and calculation. His breath came steady, but beneath the calm surface, the fires of an unfolding war crackled with unpredictable ferocity. The grand palace that gleamed in shimmering gold and silk suddenly felt like a cage closing in around them. She stood near him, every muscle taut with quiet resolve, as the weight of shared secrets wrapped around her like a suffocating cloak. The silk of her gown rustled softly in the tense silence. Her heart hammered wildly, each beat echoing the unspoken promise hanging in the air. There was no turning back. "We cannot let these threats fester," the Sheikh said, voice low, brittle with restrained rage. "The traitors hiding behind gilded curtains believe we are weak. They will learn the cost of betrayal." His gaze flickered to hers, searching for the fire beneath her composed exterior. There was vulnerability there, yes, but also a fierce defiance. The fragile alliance that had begun as necessity now tightened into something more, a bond forged in mutual danger and reluctant trust. She swallowed hard, voice barely a whisper, yet sharp as desert glass. "The secret I carry, it's more than a shadow from my past. It is a blade poised to cut deeply into the very heart of this emirate." The Sheikh's brow furrowed, the line of his jaw rigid. speak plainly. If we are to survive, the truth must burn through deception like the desert sun." She hesitated. Memories, painful and unbidden, surfaced. Nights spent hiding truth behind trembling lips. Walls closing in with silent accusations. "My father's enemies," she began slowly, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. "They dwell not only outside our walls, but within. The fractures that threaten us are wounds inflicted by those sworn to protect." A quiet intensity settled between them, suffusing the chamber with an almost tangible urgency. His hand, steady and sure, reached out, a silent gesture anchoring her amidst the storm. "Then we face not just an enemy, but a betrayal intertwined with our bloodlines. We must root it out before the empire crumbles." Her eyes met his, laden with fragile hope and fierce determination. "I have seen too much to live in denial. If this secret destroys me, let it at least be the sword that carves a path to salvation." A pulse of electricity passed between them, a moment suspended between past wounds and future battles. The Sheikh's stormy gaze softened, a rare flicker of vulnerability breaking through his formidable mask. "We will face it together," he promised, voice barely above a vow. "Not as despot and exile, but as survivors bound by fate." Their whispered words were broken by the sudden clatter of hurried footsteps. The doors burst open, revealing a breathless courier whose expression was carved from urgency and dread. "My Sheikh," he gasped, bowing sharply. "The southern borders flare with rebellion. The unrest spreads beyond whispers. Armies march, and loyalty fractures like shattered glass." A heavy silence fell, the weight of impending doom pressing down on both the Sheikh and the woman who dared to stand beside him. Outside, the sun dipped low, casting long shadows over the palace, like the first fingers of night, drawing a curtain of despair. The Sheikh's gaze hardened, his mind racing, to grasp the magnitude of chaos threatening to devour his realm. "The Emirate bleeds," he said grimly, "and soon the crown may slip through our fingers." She stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken feelings. Their alliance a fragile thread in a storm-tossed world. "Your secret," he murmured, "is no longer the only threat. The fires outside these walls do not distinguish enemy from friend." Her breath hitched, the vulnerability she'd hidden resurfacing in waves. "I once believed escape was impossible. Now, survival demands everything." The grand hall seemed to hold its breath as they moved side by side, the echo of their footsteps a drumbeat of coming war. The scent of musk and rare spices thickened the air, mingling with the electric tension that crackled between them. A chilling breeze stirred the heavy velvet curtains, as if the palace itself anticipated the tempest to come. They passed beneath arched gateways framed in gold, outside which the desert night swallowed the last vestiges of daylight. From the depths of shadow emerged a figure, cloaked and silent. His eyes glinted with cold menace beneath a hood, face obscured save for a cruel, calculating smile. "You think yourselves secure?" the stranger intoned, voice low and threatening. "This revolt is but the surface, rippling. Beneath lies a deeper darkness. one that will rend crown and throne alike. The Sheikh's fingers clenched into fists at his sides, the impulse to strike immediate, but restrained by royal command. "Reveal yourself," he demanded, "or leave before your insolence costs you more than words." A soft laugh escaped the stranger, chilling in its finality. "The storm has begun, Sultano das Palabras. Your kingdom is a house of cards, and the winds carry no mercy." The chamber seemed to freeze, the air thick with impending calamity. She glanced at the Sheikh, the man she thought she only feared, now the only anchor in a world unraveling too fast. His eyes met hers, shadows deep and unyielding. "Stand with me," he commanded, voice low but resolute. "Not for duty, nor power, but because what comes next will. Demand everything we have." Her resolve flared, fierce as the desert sun, for survival and for the truth. Outside, the distant thunder of hooves approached, a herald of the war to come. The air crackled, charged with threats both seen and unseen. And as the grand doors slammed shut behind them, sealing them in shadow and silence, the Sheikh Billionaire's hand found hers, a silent pact forged amidst ruin and rebellion. But in the dimming light, a whispered breath cut through the stillness. Not all allies will stand, nor all secrets remain buried. The heirloom dagger, long concealed beneath layers of fortune and lies, gleamed suddenly with a deadly promise. The flicker of a candle's flame danced across the ornate walls as the Sheikh Billionaire and the fallen daughter found themselves alone within the crimson-draped chamber. The thick scent of amber and sandalwood clung to the air, suffusing the space with an intoxicating yet suffocating weight. Outside, the palace seemed alive with whispers, shadows moving like restless specters, seeking cracks in their fragile alliance. The Sheikh's voice broke the heavy silence. This rebellion at the southern borders. His words held a fierceness that betrayed the calm facade he worked so hard to uphold. It is no mere inconvenience. It is the beginning of a fracture that could shatter everything we have built. Her gaze, steady and unyielding beneath the fine veil of shimmering silk, lifted to meet his. There are forces in this emirate more dangerous than any army. Those who wield power in the dark and spread dissent like poison. He stepped closer, the regal weight of his presence filling the room and pressing down on her chest. "You've carried this burden in solitude too long. Now we must bear it together." A flicker of vulnerability exposed itself in his gaze, swiftly masked by layers of iron resolve. She reached out, fingers trembling, and brushed her hand against the fine fabric of his sleeve. The contact was fleeting, but electric, two worlds colliding beneath the veneer of duty and deception. "I never wanted this life," she admitted softly, her voice threaded with regret. "Forced into alliances I did not choose, secrets that suffocate the soul. But if this empire is to survive, I must become more than merely a pawn." The Sheikh's eyes deepened, shadowed with understanding. "And you shall be more, not just a pawn, but the shield and the blade." Outside, muffled footsteps traced the hallways, the inevitable tide of the court returning. with renewed urgency. The high walls, once a sanctuary of opulence, began to close in, like the walls of a tomb. He moved to the carved wooden table, tracing the ancient maps that lay spread beneath the flickering candlelight. Sands shifted endlessly across the parchment, borders fluid and uncertain, like the loyalties that now mattered more than gold. "There are whispers," he murmured, "that the Southern Rebellion is but a symptom of a deeper rot, an insidious conspiracy within the Shadow Council." Her breath caught, the old fear creeping back, despite her newfound resolve. Those sworn to protect the emirate, plotting its ruin. He closed his eyes briefly, the moment heavy with unspoken memories. Battles fought not only on the desert plains, but within the cold marble of these very halls. "We will root out this treachery," he vowed. "But secrets such as yours," he hesitated, the fierce command in his voice softening just enough to show the man beneath the crown. "They bind us beyond simple allegiance." Her fingers pressed against her chest, where a heartbeat thundered like war drums. "Every silence, every lie I kept, it was survival. But survival alone is no longer enough." A distant chime echoed through the palace, signaling the hour and dragging them unwillingly back into their roles. Ruler and exile, captor and captive, two souls entwined by fate. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the heavy door burst open. A figure staggered in, cloak disheveled, eyes wild with dread and determination. "My Sheikh," the messenger gasped, words tumbling like shrapnel. "The desert tribes along the eastern moons rise in defiance. The borders bleed, and troops loyal to the crown have turned their wills against us." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, the fire in his eyes igniting into a blaze. "The emirate is under siege on all fronts." She reached for his hand, her touch steady and resolute, no longer trembling with fear, but tempered by a fierce promise. "Then we fight, not just for power, but for the future of every soul beneath these sands." His gaze met hers, a storm raging behind the dark depths. "We are bound together now, not by duty, but by the fire of impossible hope." A slow, grim smile crept onto her lips, the first true spark of warlike defiance. "Let whoever wishes to see us fall beware. We will not break." The grand chamber, once gleaming with jewels and golden light, took on the color of impending dusk. Shadows lengthened and deepened into threats yet unseen, ready to unravel the delicate threads of their alliance. A sharp knock at the door silenced them. The Sheikh motioned for the messenger to hold, then turned toward the heavy curtain that concealed a narrow passage leading deeper into the palace's secrets. "There are those who believe the true enemy remains hidden," he said quietly. "Men and women who would trade crown and country for whispered glory." She nodded, the silk of her gown rustling with the motion. "And we will find them." A breath passed between them, heavy with unspoken questions, fragile trust, and the knowledge that the coming days would decide the fate not only of the emirate, but of everything they dared to hold dear. The palace seemed to pulse around them, the weight of history and blood, pressing into their bones. The scent of jasmine was overtaken by the harsh sting of smoke from distant fires, a grim herald of the war unraveling beyond gilded doors. Then, as if summoned by fate, a sudden metallic clink echoed, a deliberate sound that sliced through the tense quiet. From the shadows where the flickering light dared not touch, a sharp glint revealed itself, the ancient heirloom dagger, gleaming cold and cruel. She stepped back, breath catching in the hollow of her throat, eyes locked on the deadly promise hidden in plain sight. The Sheikh's voice came low, a blade of resolve sharpened by betrayal. Not all who smile carry trust, and not all secrets are buried deep enough. The storm has begun, and this dagger will write our destiny in blood. Outside, the desert winds howled awe-chilling anthem as the emirate braced for the inevitable unraveling of loyalty, power, and love. And between the two of them, beneath the fading light, a silent question ignited. Who among them would survive the coming tempest, and who would be swallowed whole by the shadows it unleashed? The ancient dagger gleamed coldly in the muted light, its deadly promise cutting through the tension that thickened the crimson chamber. The weight of its presence settled over them like a storm, echoing the turmoil beyond the palace walls. For a breath, the exchange between the Sheikh Billionaire and the fallen daughter stilled, the unsaid words reverberating louder than any shout. He was the first to break the silence, voice low and edged with steel. This dagger belonged to the founder of our dynasty, a symbol of power, yes, but also of sacrifice. It is not simply an heirloom. It carries the curse and the hope of every ruler who dared to hold this crown. Her eyes trace the blade's intricate carvings, each etched swirl a story of blood and betrayal. It bears the signature of every secret buried beneath these sands, and the stain of every life lost to protect those secrets. The Sheikh stepped closer, the heat of his presence rising like the desert sun, pressing her further against the weight of fate. And now it has found its way into the hands of those who would undo us. A subtle shiver coursed through her, not from fear alone, but from the gravity of their shared destiny. The rebellion is only the beginning. There are whispers of conspirators who seek to claim not just the throne, but the soul of this emirate. His fingers curled around the ornate hilt of the dagger, fingertips grazing cold metal, as if drawing strength from its legacy. Then we face more than rebels. We face ghosts from the past and demons within. Outside, the first call to prayer echoed faintly, mingling with the distant roar of unrest. The palace that had once been a sanctuary now felt like a cage closing tighter, each gilded corner shadowed by suspicion and the threat of war. The delicate threads holding court and conspiracy in balance were fraying with every whispered rumor. She swallowed hard, the silk of her gown tangling beneath trembling hands. I fear my secret may be the spark that ignites this fire. He lifted a hand to touch her face, thumb brushing a stray hair behind her ear. No, he whispered fiercely, eyes burning with a mixture of pain and resolve. You are not the flame. You are the miracle that can extinguish it. Her breath caught at the tenderness, so rare beneath his armor of relentless command. For a flicker, the daughter discarded by her father saw not the formidable Sheikh, but the man imprisoned by the burdens of legacy and loneliness. We need allies, she said, voice steady despite the storm raging inside. Not just soldiers or courtiers, but those whose loyalty is unshakable. He nodded, dark eyes shadowed, but clear in purpose. Trust is the most dangerous currency in the emirate, and the most precious. Before either could speak again, the chamber door creaked open, admitting a slight figure cloaked in the midnight blue of a messenger's uniform. The infiltrating chill seemed to pull the air taut. "My Sheikh," the courier said in a voice barely above a breath. "News from the desert outposts. The eastern tribes have declared allegiance to the rebellion. Hundreds march beneath black flags. And," his eyes flicked toward the fallen daughter, "there are rumors that the Shadow Council has a traitor among its highest ranks. Someone close to the throne." The Sheikh's expression darkened, a tempest gathering behind his steady gaze. "A traitor, close enough to stab at our backs. This war is no longer one we just fight with swords." The fallen daughter's hand found his, fingers intertwining, steady, unyielding in the face of a gathering storm. "Then we become more than just rulers. We become the shield that guards this empire's heart." He squeezed her hand, the silent vow, and the blade that will strike true when the time comes. The silence stretched between them, a fragile moment suspended before chaos. The palace beyond their sanctuary pulsed with life and treachery, its halls alive with whispers and plotting shadows. The clock ticked relentlessly toward unraveling. Suddenly, a deliberate knock on the heavy door shattered the fragile calm. The Sheikh's eyes snapped to the sound, muscles tensing in immediate alertness. The door swung open, revealing a figure draped in the rich silks of the Shadow Council's emissary. His smile, thin and sharp as a desert knife. His gaze slid over the pair with unmistakable disdain and cunning. "My Sheikh," he intoned smoothly. "Rumors spread faster than the desert winds. Your newest alliance is seen not as strength, but weakness. Those who once pledged loyalty are uncertain. Whispers of betrayal cloud your name." The Sheikh stood tall, the weight of centuries on his shoulders, yet his voice cut through the room with unyielding authority. "Let all who doubt understand. Loyalty built on fear will shatter like glass beneath pressure, but loyalty built on truth and blood will endure." The emissary's smile deepened, icy and disdainful. Truth, such a fragile thing. The fallen daughter stepped forward, the fire of conviction igniting in her dark eyes. "Truth is what binds us, no matter the cost." A slow, chilling laugh echoed from the emissary before he bowed, then turned with a graceful menace. "Then, prepare yourselves, Sheikh Billionaire. The desert sleeps fitfully, and her dreams are of fire and blood." The door closed with a definitive thud, sealing the chamber once more. The Sheikh's breath was steady, but beneath his calm, a storm raged. He looked to her, the fierce determination clear as embers glowing in the night. "We have crossed a line, and the path back is swallowed by sand." Her gaze met his, unwavering and fierce. "Then we choose to walk forward, together, into the storm." Outside, the desert wind wailed, carrying with it the cries of rebellion and the promise of devastation. But within the heart of the palace, two souls forged a fragile bond, hardened by secrets, survival, and a shared destiny. And in the silence that followed, a new truth whispered. The dagger was just the beginning, an ancient power stirring in the shadows, waiting to decide who among them would rise and who would fall. The heirloom dagger's cold gleam seemed to swallow the flickering candlelight, casting jagged shadows that danced along the crimson walls. The chamber, once a refuge from the storm gathering beyond the palace gates, felt suffocating, cloaked in ancient promises and threats whispered through generations. The Sheikh Billionaire's fingers lingered on the ornate hilt, his dark eyes reflecting a storm barely contained. Her heart pounded loud enough to challenge the silence, every beat a drum calling her closer to a fate she feared, yet could no longer escape. The weight of the secret she carried pressed heavier against her chest, now entangled irrevocably with the destiny of the emirate and this enigmatic man who stood before her, not as captor or rival, but as reluctant ally. We are no longer merely bound by circumstance. His voice broke the stillness, low and charged with raw conviction. This dagger is the bloodied echo of our past, and a warning that the future we seek to hold is fragile. His gaze pierced through her, seeking the courage he silently hoped she possessed. She swallowed the knot in her throat and stepped closer, the silk of her gown whispering against the marble floor. "Then we must become the storm before it strikes us down," she replied, eyes burning with hard-won defiance. The room seemed to constrict as the disparate shadows morphed into whispers of betrayal and unfinished wars. Outside, a restless wind pushed against the palace walls, carrying with it the murmurs of those who lurked in the dark corners of the court, watchers eager for cracks in their fortress. His jaw tightened, muscles clenched like coiled steel beneath silk and gold. The traitors in the Shadow Council grow bolder by the day. They believe our fragile alliance can be shattered with a word, a whisper. His voice dropped to a fierce whisper. She met his gaze without flinching. "Let them try. We have carried burdens no one else could bear. If we break beneath their weight, then we were never fit to rule." Her words were a brittle armor, but the fire behind them was real, born from exile, humiliation, and the fierce will to survive. A sudden knock shattered the brittle calm, rattling the heavy door. The Sheikh snapped toward the sound, his silhouette rigid with anticipation. The door creaked open, revealing a slender figure wrapped in midnight blue, eyes haunted but resolute. "My Sheikh," the messenger gasped, bowing with urgency. "The desert tribes along the eastern moons have joined the rebellion. Their banners, black as night, march across the sands. And worse," his glance flickered toward the fallen daughter, "word is that the traitor within the Shadow Council moves closer. To us every day, smiling in the gilded halls even now." The chamber froze. The scent of jasmine and amber faded, replaced by the acrid promise of burning earth. The Sheikh's eyes darkened, filled with a tempest ready to break free. "They have pierced our defenses," he growled, a glint of cold fire igniting within. "Our enemies walk among us, disguised not just as courtiers, but as kin." Her hand found his with a steady resolve, fingers intertwining as an unspoken vow passed between them. "Then we fight not as sovereign and subject, but as two souls, tethered by a shared fate. His gaze softened for a fleeting moment, fragile as a desert flower amid howling winds. This alliance, forged in necessity, is now our greatest strength and our gravest danger. The golden light of dusk filtered through the stained glass, splashing vibrant hues across the marbled floor. In that fractured spectrum, they stood as fragile as the empire they sought to save. The silence stretched taut, poised on the edge of an unspoken question. How long could they hold this fragile fortress before it crumbled? A soft, ominous laugh echoed from the shadows near the doorway. Both turned sharply. Emerging was a figure draped in the rich silks of the Shadow Council, his presence like a dark cloud suffocating the room. His eyes gleamed with cruel amusement as he stepped forward. "My Sheikh," the emissary bowed with mock deference. "The court grows restless. Your alliance is whispered with scorn amid those who once pledged loyalty. They see only weakness where you see necessity." His gaze flickered over the fallen daughter, with disdain sharpened by years of jealousy and suspicion. "Soon, even your closest will question your judgment." The Sheikh's dark gaze blazed with controlled fury. "Those who cannot see past their fear are destined to become the first casualties of history." His voice was steel wrapped in silk, cold but commanding. She lifted her chin, eyes blazing with fierce pride. "Truth is the foundation we build upon, no matter the cost." The emissary smiled, a thin, poisonous curve, and retreated into the shadows. "Then prepare yourselves. The desert winds carry whispers of death, an empire's final breath closing fast." The door slammed shut with a thunderous echo, sealing them once more in a chamber heavy with unspoken promises and imminent danger. The Sheikh's hand remained clenched around hers, a silent signal that their fates were intertwined beyond any choice. The night deepened, the palace walls trembling as if they, too, felt the approaching storm. Outside, distant trumpets heralded the gathering of armies, a pulse of doom quickening with every passing moment. She met his eyes, fierce and unyielding, the fierce fire inside her mirrored in his dark depths. "If we fall," she whispered softly, "let us at least fall together." His lips curved in a rare, grim smile. "Together until the last breath." In the flickering candlelight, the heirloom dagger gleamed once more, a silent herald of blood yet to be spilled, and a legacy that would not let them go. And somewhere deep within the palace's labyrinthine halls, a secret knot of betrayal tightened, a name whispered in shadows destined to shatter all they held dear. The heavy door closed behind them with a whisper that felt like a sigh of relief and a warning. All at once, the crimson-draped chamber, once a sanctuary from the palace's ceaseless storms, now pulsed with an uneasy silence, broken only by the faint, steady crackle of the dying candlelight. Outside, the distant wails of the desert wind clawed at the tall windows, fracturing the fragile calm with echoes of rebellion and unrest. The Sheikh Billionaire gaze burned with restless intensity as he released the ornate dagger from his grasp. Its deadly coldness seemed to seep into the air, leaving behind a tension that clung to the towering silk curtains and glinted off the gilded walls. Every carved swirl etched into the blade whispered tales of sacrifice, of rulers who bore unthinkable burdens, and of fates twisted by betrayal. He stepped forward, the weight of his authority gathering in each deliberate movement. "The Shadow Council is more than a whisper now," he said, voice low but carrying the sharp edge of command. "Their venom spills deeper than we expected." Her eyes, dark and solemn under the sheen of moonlight filtering through stained glass, did not waver. The secret she carried, the one that had once belonged solely to her, now bound them both in a silent tempest. "I feared this day," she confessed, voice trembling like desert sand caught in a sudden gust. "But I will not let it be the end." The space between them contracted, charged with the raw energy of unspoken promises and the weight of countless dangers. For a moment, the grand chamber felt small enough, intimate, and yet vast enough to hold the storm broiling within their hearts. He reached out, brushing a stray lock of her hair behind her ear, his fingers lingering against her skin with a delicate strength that belied his fierce exterior. "You are no pawn to be sacrificed," he murmured. "You are the flame we need to weather this night." A fragile warmth bloomed beneath his gaze, kindling a spark she had long believed buried beneath chains of exile and humiliation. The silk of her gown whispered as she shifted closer, emboldened by the rare flicker of softness in his gaze. "Then let us burn together," she whispered, voice laced with both defiance and surrender. Beyond the chamber's heavy walls, the palace breathed in restless anticipation, its gilded halls alive with murmurs of treachery and shifting allegiances. The scent of jasmine had long since been overtaken by the acrid sting of smoke rising from distant fires, a grim herald of the war tightening its grip on their world. Her fingers found his, hands intertwining in a bond forged not only by necessity, but by a shared hunger for survival. "There is no turning back," she said, the weight of truth grounding her resolve. "Our secrets are no longer shields. They are battlegrounds." He nodded, the flicker of vulnerability behind his storm-dark eyes deepening into a fierce resolve. "Then we become warriors," he said, voice steady and unyielding. "Not just for the throne, for the soul of this emirate, and for whatever future we dare to dream beyond its walls." The door behind them creaked open abruptly, a figure cloaked in midnight blue, slipping inside with urgency, carving sharp lines across his face. His breath was ragged, each word tumbling out in a torrent of alarm. "My Sheikh, the desert tribes along the eastern moons have risen in defiance. Black banners blot the horizon, and even the soldiers sworn to your crown hesitate." The Sheikh's hand tightened around hers, steel meeting resilience. "The empire bleeds on every front. This war will be carved not just by swords, but by secrets and shadows alike." She swallowed hard, the room seeming to tilt on the axis of unfolding chaos. "And we stand as the final storm." His gaze searched hers, dark pools of unspoken fears and fierce promises. "No longer enemies, no longer strangers. We fight together," she affirmed, voice steady as the pounding of hooves, echoing beyond palace gates. The candle guttered, casting long shadows that stretched and recoiled like living things. The ancient dagger gleamed once more, a silent witness to destinies entwined and betrayals yet to be unveiled. Then, a sudden knock shattered the fragile silence. Both turned sharply as the heavy door swung open to reveal a man draped in the rich silk of the Shadow Council, eyes gleaming with cold cunning. "My Sheikh," he intoned, smooth and venomous. The court's whispers grow louder. "Your alliance is seen not as salvation, but as a fracture. The loyal question, the fearful plot." The Sheikh's jaw clenched, fury lighting the storm behind his eyes. "Those who doubt will fall first. Loyalty, forged in blood, endures beyond fear." The emissary's smile twisted, a serpent coiled and ready. Truth, however fragile, can topple even the mightiest. Her gaze burned fiercely, unyielding. "Then we will stand on truth, even if the ground beneath us cracks." With that, the emissary retreated into the enfolding shadows, leaving behind a silence thick with the promise of ruin. The Sheikh's hand tightened around hers once again. This path is no longer about power or pride, but about survival. A storm howled beyond the palace walls, desert winds carrying with them cries of rebellion and the scent of burning earth. Between them, in the fragile space where desperate hope met relentless duty, a shared breath ignited a spark. But in the depths of that darkness, beneath layers of gold and silk, a whispered betrayal stirred, and the dagger, silent but potent, waited for its chosen hand to decide the emirate's fate. The dawn broke slowly over the vast emirate, casting a golden light that seeped through the towering windows of the grand chamber. The palace, once heavy with shadows of betrayal and whispered threats, now seemed to breathe anew, its walls waking with the promise of a day unburdened by fear. The Sheikh Billionaire stood by the window, the weight of countless battles visible in the depth of his dark eyes, yet now softened by the peace he had fought so fiercely to reclaim. Beside him, the woman who had once been a fallen daughter, cast away by blood and circumstance, met his gaze with quiet strength and a radiant hope that outshone the sun's first light. No longer was she the pawn of cruel fate, nor was he the solitary ruler weighed down by unyielding duty. Together, their intertwined fingers spoke volumes of a trust forged in fire and tempered by shared trials. "The Shadow Council," the Sheikh murmured, voice low but resolute, "has been dismantled. Those who sought to fracture the emirate have been rooted out, by courage, by truth, and by the strength we found in each other." Her lips curved into a soft smile, the pain of secrets past fading into a distant memory. "And the rebellion that threatened to tear our home asunder has quieted. The desert listens again to the song of peace." A gentle breeze stirred the silks of her gown, carrying the scent of jasmine and oud that seemed to whisper of new beginnings. Outside, the golden sands stretched endlessly, no longer deserts of despair, but lands ripe with the promise of rebirth. She turned to the Sheikh, eyes gleaming with a mixture of gratitude and love. "You gave me a chance when none seemed possible. You saw beyond the exile, beyond the silence, and chose to stand beside me." He cupped her face with a tenderness that belied his formidable presence. "It was you who gave me strength. In your courage I found the hope my empire lacked. Together, we have rewritten the destiny written for us." Their voices merged in a quiet laughter, soft as the petals of the blooming jasmine in the palace gardens below. A garden once neglected, now alive with the colors of life and symbol of the peace blooming between them. The halls of the palace stirred with newfound energy. Courtiers, once shadowed by doubt and suspicion, now bowed with genuine respect and warmth toward the Sheikh and his chosen partner, who had earned her place not by birthright alone, but by resilience and honor. In the great hall, the princess's name was spoken no longer in whispers, but with pride. Her secret, once a chainsaw of destruction, had been unveiled and transformed into a beacon of unity, proof that even the deepest wounds might yield to healing when met with truth. A feast was prepared to mark the binding of their union, echoing across the marble floors with joy and celebration. Musicians played melodies that wove through the vaulted ceilings like a hopeful prayer, while laughter and light filled the spaces that had long known only silence and fear. In a quiet corner of the palace, the ancient heirloom dagger rested not as a symbol of curse or betrayal, but as an emblem of legacy, reminding all that power, tempered by love and justice, could forge a future worthy of the throne. The Sheikh Billionaire and the woman who had once been cast out now stood united at the palace's grand balcony, overlooking the emirate they had saved. The horizon blazed with the colors of the rising sun, painting the sky in hues of gold and rose, the dawn of an era shaped not by legacy alone, but by the bonds they had forged. He whispered, "Whatever storms the desert may bring, we will face them together." She smiled, her heart alight with certainty and peace. Together, always. Between them, the silent desert winds carried a promise, riding the waves of warmth and light that stretched across the land. A promise of love's triumph over shadows, of hope enduring beyond betrayal, and of a kingdom reborn under a sky where two souls had found their forever. The palace exhaled one last breath of jasmine and sandalwood before the doors opened wide, welcoming the future they had dared to create. An empire not just of gold and power, but of heartfelt unity, forgiveness, and eternal love.